23 days. That's how long an 8-year-old girl sat dying on the steps of a general store waiting for her murdered father to return. Everyone walked past her. Everyone, except one man. Why'd you stop? Because someone should have. What he didn't know, the men who killed her father were about to come for him too. Before we dive into this incredible story of courage and redemption, hit that like button if you believe in standing up for what's right. Subscribe so you never miss stories that restore your faith in humanity. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from right now. I read every single one. Now let me take you back to Silver Creek, Montana, 1879. To a child whose feet told a story her eyes never could. The child's feet told the story before her eyes ever could. Cracked skin split open like drought-parched earth. 10 toenails turned the purple black of rotting plums. Dried blood crusted between toes that had forgotten what shoes felt like. The soles bore cuts deep enough to show white bone in places, and those cuts had sealed themselves with dirt and infection because there was no one left to care, no one left to clean them, no one left to notice that an 8-year-old girl was dying on the steps of a general store in Silver Creek, Montana. 23 days she had been sitting there. 23 days since her father told her to wait. 23 days since he climbed those church scaffolds and never came back down. The people of Silver Creek had their own story about those 23 days. Week 1, they brought food. Felt good about themselves. Week 2, the food stopped coming. Week 3, they stopped looking. Now, in the brutal Montana summer of 1879, they crossed to the other side of Main Street. Rather than walk past the ghost child who refused to leave, refused to cry, refused to die with any kind of dignity. Her name was Emma Hayes, though most folks had forgotten that detail. 8 years old with hair the color of rusted iron and eyes like amber held up to lamplight. Those eyes tracked every person who passed, not begging, not pleading, just watching, waiting, as if sheer stubbornness could resurrect a dead man. The child hadn't cried in 19 days, not when hunger gnawed through her belly like a living creature trying to eat its way out. Not when the summer sun blistered her small shoulders raw. Not when the good people of Silver Creek stepped over her like she was nothing but dust on their boots, another piece of frontier wreckage nobody wanted to claim. But on the 21st day when a stranger rode into town on a horse that had seen too many miles, Emma Hayes did something she swore she'd never do again. She looked up. Cole Harper didn't plan to stop in Silver Creek. Hell, he didn't plan to stop anywhere for more than one night. 4 years of running had taught him that routes meant targets and targets meant death. But his horse needed water and his stomach needed coffee, and Silver Creek looked like the kind of place a man could get both without anyone asking questions he didn't want to answer. He was 35 years old and looked 50. 4 years does that to a man when those years are spent looking over his shoulder, sleeping with a gun under his pillow, waking up in strange towns with his dead daughter's name on his lips. The beard helped hide the worst of it. The scars beneath the beard, those were harder to conceal. Not the physical ones, those would have been easier. The ones that mattered lived behind his eyes, and they were visible to anyone who cared enough to look. Most people didn't care enough to look. Cole rode down Main Street with the practiced wariness of a man who had learned that trouble could arrive from any direction at any moment. The town wasn't much. A saloon with swinging doors that hung crooked on rusted hinges. A general store with paint so faded the words were barely legible. A church steeple reaching toward heaven like it was begging for rain that would never come. Hitching posts lined the street where horses stood with their heads down, defeated by heat that made the air shimmer like water. He tied his mount outside the general store and climbed 3 steps to the door. That's when he saw her, small, red hair matted and tangled, knees pulled to chest, arms wrapped around them like she was holding herself together with nothing but willpower. She wore a dress that might have been yellow once now faded to the color of old bone. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Empty eyes in a child's face. He'd seen that look before. In mirrors. In the eyes of men who'd survived battles they had no right to survive. In his own reflection after Sarah and Grace died. Cole walked past her into the store. Inside was cooler, darker. A heavy woman behind the counter looked up with the flat expression of someone who'd stopped being surprised by anything years ago. Her name was Mrs. Porter, though Cole didn't know that yet. She wore her gray hair pulled back tight enough to hurt and an apron that hadn't been washed in a week. Help you. Her voice carried all the enthusiasm of week-old bread. Coffee, flour, bacon, whatever jerky you've got. She moved slowly, pulling items from shelves with the efficiency of long practice. Cole found himself glancing back toward the door, toward the small silhouette just visible through the dusty glass. That child outside. The words came out before he could stop them. She belonged to someone. Mrs. Porter's face tightened in a way that said she'd been asked this question before and was tired of answering it. The Hayes girl. Father died near a month back. Fool fell from scaffolding at the new church, broke his neck clean through. And her mother. Dead years ago. Childbirth, I heard. Girl's been sitting there 23 days now, waiting for her daddy to come back. Mrs. Porter slapped his supplies on the counter with unnecessary force. Someone ought to tell her he ain't coming, but nobody wants that job. $2.40. Cole paid without speaking, gathered his things, walked toward the door. The child hadn't moved. Up close, he could see more. The thinness of her wrists where they wrapped around her legs. The hollows under her eyes, deep purple bruises of exhaustion. Her bare feet still bearing the marks of those 23 days. Keep walking, he told himself. Ain't your concern. Nothing here is your concern. You stay, you plant roots, and then they find you. They always find you. He kept walking, made it all the way to his horse, loaded the supplies, put his foot in the stirrup. Mister? Her voice was small, cracked from disuse, like someone who'd forgotten how to speak and was only just now remembering. Cole turned. She hadn't moved from her spot against the wall, but she was looking at him now. Really looking. Those amber eyes focused with an intensity that didn't belong in an 8-year-old. You dropped something. He glanced down. A coin lay in the dust. A penny probably fallen from his pocket when he'd fumbled with the supplies. Keep it, he said. Don't want your charity. The words came sharp, surprising. Most children in her position would have grabbed that penny before it hit the ground. Just telling you what I saw, Cole heard himself say. He picked up the penny, looked at it, looked at her. The smart thing would be to mount up and ride. Put Silver Creek in his past, like he'd put dozens of towns in his past. Let someone else deal with the dying child on the general store steps. But something in those eyes held him. Maybe it was the stubbornness, the refusal to beg or cry or break. Maybe it was the way she sat there like she was made of stone, like she could wait forever if that's what it took. Maybe it was that she reminded him of Grace, who'd been 5 years old and just as stubborn about things that mattered. When's the last time you ate? He asked. She didn't answer, just set her jaw in a hard line, stubborn as stone itself. I asked you a question, girl, and I ain't answering it. Don't need your help. Don't need nobody's help. He should have been angry, should have mounted up and ridden out and never thought of her again. Instead, he found himself tying his horse back to the rail, found himself walking back into the general store, found himself buying bread and cheese and dried apples and a canteen of water. When he came back out, she was still there. Still hadn't moved. Cole sat down on the steps, not next to her. That would spook her. But close enough. He set the food between them. I ain't eating your food, she said. Didn't say you had to. Then why'd you buy it? Maybe I'm hungry. You already got supplies. Cole bit into the bread, chewed slowly, said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Minutes passed, the sun beat down. Somewhere a dog barked. A wagon rattled by the driver, not even glancing at the child who'd become part of the scenery. I ain't a beggar. Her voice was quieter now, a crack in the armor. My pa always said beggars got no pride. Eating food someone offers ain't begging, Cole said. It's accepting kindness. Ain't no such thing as kindness. People want something, always want something. Cole sat down the bread, turned to look at her fully for the first time. How old are you? 8, almost 9. And you've already figured it out that people always want something. Figured it out watching this town walk past me for 23 days. Her voice didn't waver. Strong, too strong for 8 years old. First week they brought food, felt good about themselves. Second week they stopped. Third week they stopped looking. Now they cross the street so they don't have to see me at all. She reached for the cheese. bit into it with the careful control of someone who'd learned that eating too fast made you sick when your stomach had been empty for weeks. "This town killed my pa," she said between bites. Cole went still. "Oh, they say he fell. Accident, they say, but I saw them up there. Saw Mr. Webb and Mr. Price. They was arguing with him, pushing him, then he fell." "You telling me your father was murdered?" "I'm telling you what I saw. Told the sheriff, too. Know what he said?" She mimicked a man's deep voice with surprising accuracy. "Child's imagination. Grief makes people see things." Then he patted my head and walked away. The bread turned to sawdust in Cole's mouth. "Where you been sleeping?" "Here, under the porch when it rains." "And nobody, not a single soul in this town offered you a bed?" "Mrs. Thornton at the boarding house lets me wash up sometimes. Gives me scraps when she remembers." Emma's jaw tightened. "I don't need more than that. Pa's coming back." "Your pa's dead, child." The words came out harder than Cole intended. He saw her flinch, saw the armor crack for just a second before she rebuilt it. "I know that." Her voice was a whisper. "I know he's buried in the churchyard. I know he ain't coming back. But if I leave these steps, then it's real. Then I got nothing left of him. This is where he told me to wait. So I wait." Something broke inside Cole's chest, something he'd kept locked away for 4 years. He saw Grace in her eyes. His Grace who'd been 5 when the fire took her. 5 years old and calling for her papa while the flames ate the house. And he'd fought through them too late, always too late, don't he told himself. "Don't let her in. You let her in, you'll lose her too. That's how it works. That's how it always works." "What's your name?" he heard himself ask. "Emma. Emma Hayes." "I'm Cole." She looked at him with those amber eyes and he saw the calculation there. The weighing. 8 years old and already she'd learned to measure people the way gunfighters measured each other before drawing. "You ain't from here," she said. "No." "Where are you from?" "Everywhere." "Nowhere." "That ain't an answer. It's the only one I got." She finished the cheese, reached for an apple. Her hands were shaking slightly, and Cole realized it wasn't hunger anymore. It was exhaustion. 23 days of heat and fear and the slow death of hope. "Why'd you stop?" she asked. "What? Everyone else walks past. Why'd you stop?" Cole looked out at the street, at the people who kept their eyes forward, who'd turned a dying child into part of the scenery they no longer noticed. "Because someone should have," he said finally. "Because someone should have 22 days ago." "That ain't an answer either. Maybe it's the only truth I've got." Night came slow and hot, the kind of heat that didn't break even after the sun went down, that just pressed against the skin like a living thing. Cole should have ridden out hours ago, should have been miles from Silver Creek by now, putting distance between himself and everything that reminded him of what he'd lost. Instead, he found himself looking for a place to stay. The boarding house was easy to find. It was the only building in Silver Creek with a painted sign that hadn't faded into illegibility. "Rooms available," in letters that someone had carefully maintained. Lamplight glowed in the windows, warm and inviting in a way that made Cole instinctively distrust it. Warm and inviting meant comfortable. Comfortable meant staying. Staying meant dying. But his horse needed a stable, and his body needed a bed, and Silver Creek had already worked its way under his skin in the way of places that catch you when you're not looking. He climbed the porch steps and knocked. The woman who opened the door was nothing like what he expected. She was younger than Mrs. Porter, maybe early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple bun that showed the elegant line of her neck. Blue eyes that were sharp and assessing, but not unkind. She wore a simple gray dress that had been mended carefully in several places, and there was a smudge of flour on one cheek that she hadn't noticed. For 2 seconds, they just looked at each other. Cole saw intelligence in those blue eyes. Saw strength, saw the same kind of weariness he carried, the kind that comes from losing something precious and learning to live with the ghost of it. "Got a room?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. "How long?" Her voice was lower than he expected. Calm, steady. "One night." "That's what they all say." A ghost of a smile touched her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. $1.50 for the night, includes breakfast. 50 cents extra if you want your clothes washed. Just the room. She stepped back to let him in. The boarding house was clean, simply furnished with the kind of care that spoke of pride despite limited means. A staircase led up to the second floor. To the left, he could see into a dining room where a few men sat playing cards. To the right, a kitchen where something smelled like apples and cinnamon. "I'm Kate," she said, leading him toward the stairs. "Kate Mitchell. Most folks call me Mrs. Mitchell, but I suspect you are not most folks." "Cole Harper." "Well, Mr. Harper, you're in room 4. Top of the stairs, end of the hall. Breakfast is at 6. If you miss it, you go hungry." She handed him a key. Their fingers brushed for just a moment, and Cole felt something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Not attraction exactly. Or maybe it was, but buried under so many layers of guilt and grief that he almost didn't recognize it. Recognition, maybe. The sense that this woman had survived something too. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said as she turned to go. "That girl, Emma. The one sitting outside the store." Kate stopped, didn't turn around. "What about her? How long has she really been there?" 23 days, like Mrs. Porter told you." Now Kate did turn, and there was something fierce in her eyes. "And before you ask why nobody's taken her in, the answer is fear. This town is scared. Scared of asking questions, scared of crossing the wrong people, scared of caring too much about things that might get them hurt." "Are you scared?" The question hung between them. "Terrified," Kate said quietly, "but I've found that being scared doesn't change anything. It just makes you a coward while you watch the world burn." She walked away, leaving Cole alone in the hallway with a key in his hand and too many questions in his head. Cole couldn't sleep. He tried. Lay in the narrow bed in room 4 and stared at the ceiling and tried to let exhaustion pull him under. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emma's face. Saw her sitting on those steps waiting for a father who would never return. Saw Grace's face superimposed over Emma's. Grace who'd waited for him to save her from the fire, and he'd been too late, always too late. Around midnight, he gave up, pulled on his pants and shirt, and padded downstairs in his bare feet, moving quietly out of long habit. The boarding house was dark except for a faint glow from the kitchen. He found Kate there, sitting at a table with a cup of tea, staring at nothing. "Can't sleep either?" she asked without looking up. "Seems not." "There's coffee on the stove. It's old, but it's hot." Cole poured himself a cup and sat down across from her. For a while, neither of them spoke. It was a comfortable silence, the kind that exists between people who understand that some things don't need words. "You want to know about Emma," Kate said finally. It wasn't a question. "If you want to tell me." Kate wrapped her hands around her teacup like she was trying to draw warmth from it despite the summer heat. Her father was Thomas Hayes. Good man, honest man, the kind of man this town didn't deserve. She paused. He was building furniture to pay off a debt. Owed $3,000 to Victor Webb and Daniel Price. They run this town, in case you hadn't figured that out yet. Webb owns the bank. Price owns most of the cattle and land. "Let me guess," Cole said. "They wanted their money faster than he could pay." Thomas was working it off through labor. Beautiful work, too. Best furniture I ever saw. But it wasn't fast enough for them. They wanted him to sell his land. A small parcel, but it sits right between Webb's holdings and Price's ranch. Combine those properties would be worth a fortune. And Thomas wouldn't sell. He'd die before he let them take it. Kate's voice caught, his exact words as it turns out. That land was his legacy for Emma. His father homesteaded it, worked it, died on it. Thomas used to say it was the only thing of value he had to leave his daughter. Cole felt something cold settle in his chest. What happened the day he died? He was working on the church steeple. Carpentry work. Emma followed him that morning. Thomas didn't know. She was hiding in the rafters watching him work. Kate's eyes were distant, seeing something Cole couldn't. Webb and Price came, started yelling about the debt. Emma heard every word. Saw Webb grab Thomas's arm, saw Price move behind him. Saw Price push him. Down 40 feet. Thomas hit the ground so hard, Emma said she heard his neck break from where she was hiding. The room felt too small suddenly. Too close. Cole stood up, paced to the window, looked out at the dark street where Emma still sat, still waited. "She told the sheriff," Kate continued. "Tucker. He's in Webb, and Price's pocket has been for years." He laughed in her face. Told her grief makes children imagine things. Then he went straight to Webb and Price and told them what Emma claimed to have seen. Jesus. The next night, Emma's house burned down, the small cabin Thomas had built on that land. Emma was at the church, sleeping in the back pew. When she came home the next morning, everything was gone. Her clothes, her tiong, her father's tools, every single thing Thomas Hayes had ever built. All of it ash. Cole's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the windowsill. "That's why she's been sitting on those steps," Kate said. "It's the last place her father told her to wait before he climbed that scaffolding. And it's the only place she has left." "Why haven't you taken her in?" The question came out sharper than Cole intended, but Kate didn't flinch. "Because I can't have children, Mr. Harper." Her voice was steady, but he heard the pain beneath it. "My husband James died 3 years ago. We'd been trying for a baby for 5 years before that. Nothing ever took. The doctor said I'm barren." That was his word. Barren. She stood up, carried her teacup to the sink, kept her back to Cole. "I look at Emma and I see everything I wanted and couldn't have. Every failure, every broken promise I made to James about giving him a son. And it's easier to let her sit there dying than to love her and fail her the way I failed everyone else." The confession hung in the air between them. "That's the most honest thing anyone's said to me in 4 years, Cole said quietly. Kate turned, looked at him with those blue eyes that saw too much. "You're running from something," she said. "I can see it. The way you keep one hand near your gun, the way you check the door before you sit down, the way you look at Emma like she's a ghost. Maybe she is. Or maybe she's just a little girl who needs someone to stop walking past her." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Both of them looked toward the window. Dark clouds were rolling in from the mountains, the first storm in weeks pushing down with the kind of violence that Montana summers specialized in. "She won't leave those steps," Kate said. "I've tried. Others have tried. She just sits there waiting." Cole was already moving toward the door. "Where are you going?" "To bring her in from the storm." "Mr. Harper, she won't come. She's been refusing help for 3 weeks. Cole looked back at Kate. Something in his eyes must have shone because she stopped talking. "Then I'll carry her," he said. "Nobody's dying in the rain tonight. Not on my watch." He was out the door before she could respond. The storm hit like God's own anger. One minute the air was thick and still. The next wind tore down Main Street hard enough to rip loose boards from storefronts. Lightning split the sky in jagged white lines that left after images on Cole's eyes. Thunder followed so close behind that he felt it in his chest like a second heartbeat. Emma was still there, curled against the wall of the general store, arms over her head, shaking as rain began to fall in sheets. Cole ran through the downpour boots, splashing through puddles that formed in seconds. The rain was cold, shocking after the day's heat. It plastered his shirt to his back and turned the street to mud in moments. "Emma," she didn't look up, just pressed harder against the wall, making herself as small as possible. Cole knelt beside her, rain streaming down his face. "Emma, you have to come inside." "No." The word came out muffled by her arms. "Pa said wait here. He said he'd come back." "Your pa's not coming back in a storm, girl, and he wouldn't want you drowning while you waited." Lightning struck close enough that Cole smelled ozone. Emma flinched, pressing harder against the wall. She was soaked through, shivering despite the summer warmth, and Cole could see her lips starting to turn blue. "Emma," he put his hands on her shoulders, gentle but firm. "I know about waiting for people who ain't coming. Spent 4 years doing it myself. And I'm telling you, your pa would want you safe. He'd want you warm and dry and alive. You dying on these steps don't honor him. It just means the world took one more thing it had no right to take." She looked up at him then. Rain streamed down her face, mixing with tears she probably didn't even know she was crying. "Why do you care?" Her voice was so small, almost lost in the storm. "Because you have her eyes," he thought. "Because you're stubborn like she was. Because I couldn't save Grace, but maybe I can save you. Because if I walk away from you now, I'll never forgive myself. Because I do," he said simply. "That's the only answer I have." For a long moment, she just stared at him, measuring, weighing, trying to decide if this stranger was another person who would fail her, or if maybe, just maybe, he was different. Then her small hand slipped into his. It was the coldest hand Cole had ever felt, like holding ice. Her fingers were thin, so thin he could feel every bone, and they trembled against his palm. Cole lifted her. She weighed nothing, less than nothing, a bag of bones wrapped in soaked fabric that used to be a dress. She didn't resist, just let her head fall against his shoulder as he carried her across the street through the mud and rain. Kate was waiting on the porch of the boarding house, a lamp held high. When she saw Cole carrying Emma, something broke across her face. Relief, grief, guilt. A dozen emotions Cole didn't have names for. Inside, Kate said, holding the door. Quickly. Cole carried Emma into the warm, dry interior, set her down gently on a chair near the kitchen stove. Kate was already moving, grabbing towels, stoking the fire higher, her movements quick and efficient. I'll heat water for a bath, Kate said. Mr. Harper, you're soaked through too. There are dry clothes in the hall closet. But Cole didn't move, just stood there dripping on Kate's clean floor, watching as she wrapped a towel around Emma's thin shoulders, watching as she knelt down and began to carefully, tenderly remove Emma's soaked dress, watching as Emma, for the first time in 23 days, let someone help her. You came back, Emma said quietly. Her eyes were on Cole, wide and wondering. Said I would. People say a lot of things. I'm not people. Kate looked up at Cole then, and something passed between them. An understanding, a recognition that tonight had changed something, though neither of them could name what exactly. Mr. Harper, Kate said softly, how long did you say you were staying? Cole looked at Emma, at her thin face and her amber eyes and her stubborn chin, looked at Kate with her careful hands and her guarded heart and her kitchen that smelled like apples and cinnamon, looked at the warm lamplight and the sound of rain on the roof and the feeling of being inside when the storm raged outside. I don't remember, he heard himself say. Maybe I'll stay a while longer. How long is a while? Cole pulled out his wallet, counted out bills. Enough for a week, long enough to make sure she's okay. Kate took the money. Her fingers brushed his again, and this time neither of them pretended not to notice. Room 4 is yours as long as you need it, she said. Emma was watching them both with those two knowing eyes. She looked like she wanted to say something but was too exhausted to find the words. Kate helped her stand, supported her weight as they moved toward the stairs. Come on, sweetheart, Kate said gently. Let's get you clean and warm and fed. Will he be here? Emma asked. In the morning. I'll be here, Cole said. Promise. The word hung in the air. Promises were dangerous things. Promises could be broken. Promises could get you killed or, worse, get the people you cared about killed. But looking at Emma's face, pale and scared and desperately hopeful, Cole found he couldn't lie to her. I promise. Emma nodded once, let Kate lead her upstairs. Cole stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the rain, feeling his clothes drip onto the floor, wondering what the hell he'd just committed himself to. A little girl's voice drifted down from upstairs. Is the water hot yet, Mrs. Mitchell? Kate's voice soft and warm. Almost, sweetheart. Almost. Cole walked to the window, looked out at the storm, at the empty steps where Emma had sat for 23 days, at the rain washing away her ghost. He'd stopped. After 4 years of running, of never staying anywhere longer than one night, of keeping everyone at arm's length because getting worse meant pain, he'd stopped. For a child with amber eyes and a stubborn heart. For a woman with a guarded smile and careful hands. For a town that had forgotten how to be kind. Cole wasn't fool enough to think this would end well. Good things didn't happen to men like him. Men who'd failed their families. Men who killed for revenge and called it justice. Men who ran instead of facing what they'd lost. But maybe, just maybe, staying was worth the risk. Thunder rolled across Silver Creek, and Cole Harper stood in Kate Mitchell's kitchen and listened to the sound of a child laughing upstairs for the first time in 23 days. He'd figure out the rest tomorrow. 5 days changed everything. On day 2, Emma woke in a real bed for the first time in 24 days. Panicked. Disoriented. She threw off the clean sheets Kate had tucked around her and ran downstairs in bare feet, heart hammering, certain that Cole had left like everyone else always left. She found him in the yard behind the boarding house, fixing a broken step with wood and nails borrowed from Kate's tool shed. The morning sun caught the gray in his beard, turned it silver. He looked up when he heard her running feet. Thought you'd sleep longer, he said. Emma stopped, stared. Her chest was heaving, partly from running, partly from the relief that crashed through her so hard it made her knees weak. You're still here. Said I would be. People say a lot of things. Cole set down his hammer, looked at her with those dark eyes that had seen too much. I'm not people, Emma. We established that last night. She nodded slowly, walked closer, watched him work for a minute in silence. You know how to fix things, she observed. Some things, not everything. Pa used to fix things, too. He could build anything, tables, chairs, whole houses if you gave him enough wood. Her voice went soft. He was building me a rocking chair for my birthday. Never got to finish it. Cole's hand stilled on the wood. When's your birthday? August 15th, 3 weeks away. She sat down on the step he'd just repaired, testing its strength. I'll be 9. 9's a good age. You got kids? The question came out casual, but Cole heard the weight beneath it. Had a daughter once, Grace. She was 5 when she died. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, how'd she die? Most adults would have deflected, changed the subject, told her she was too young to hear about death. But Cole had learned in the past 5 days that Emma Hayes was 8 years old going on 80, and she deserved honesty more than protection. Fire. 4 years ago, 3 men burned my house while we were sleeping. My wife Sarah got Grace to the window past her to me, but the floor gave out before Sarah could climb through. You watched her die. It wasn't a question. Yeah. Like I watched Pa die. Yeah, Emma picked at a splinter on the step. People keep saying it gets easier. That time heals. Does it? Cole thought about that. About 4 years of running, 4 years of waking up screaming, 4 years of seeing Sarah's face in every flame, hearing Grace's voice in every child's laughter. No, he said finally, it doesn't get easier, it just gets different. The hurt moves to a different place, but it doesn't go away. Good. He looked at her surprised. He repeated. If it went away, that'd mean they didn't matter, that we could just forget them and move on like they never existed. Emma's jaw set in that stubborn line he was coming to recognize. I don't want to forget Pa. Ever. Even if remembering hurts. Cole felt something shift in his chest, something that had been frozen for 4 years starting to thaw. Your Pa would be proud of you, he said quietly. You think so? I know so. Kate appeared in the doorway, then flour on her hands and concern in her eyes. Emma, you should be resting. Doctor said, I'm fine, Mrs. Mitchell. Just wanted to make sure Cole was still here. Kate's eyes met Cole's over Emma's head. Something passed between them. Understanding. Maybe something more. Well, he is, and he'll be here at breakfast too, which is in 10 minutes. So both of you wash up. Day 3 brought the first real conversation. They were sitting on Kate's front porch after dinner, Emma between them watching the sun paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson. Kate had brought out lemonade and they sipped it slowly, letting the evening cool wash over them. Can I ask you something? Emma said, looking at Cole. Always. Why are you really here? I mean, really. It's not just about fixing steps. Kate shifted in her seat, interested in the answer herself. Cole took a long drink of lemonade, buying time. But Emma's eyes were steady on him, patient and knowing, and he realized she wouldn't accept anything less than truth. I'm running, he said finally. Been running for 4 years, ever since Sarah and Grace died. Running from what? From the man who killed them. His name is Garrett Stone. He and his 2 brothers were hired to burn my house. I was a marshal back then investigating corruption. Got too close to the wrong people, and they decided to eliminate the problem. Emma's hand found his small and warm. I killed 2 of his brothers, Cole continued. Tracked them down 3 months after the fire. Shot them both, but Garrett got away, and he's been hunting me ever since. How do you know he's still hunting you? Kate asked quietly. Because men like Garrett don't stop. Revenge is all they have, all they are. He'll come for me eventually. He always does. That's why I never stay anywhere longer than a night. That's why I shouldn't be here now. But you are here, Emma said. Yeah, I am. Why? Cole looked at her, at this small, fierce girl who'd survived 23 days through sheer stubbornness, who'd watched her father die and her house burn and still refused to break. Because you looked at me that first day and I saw my daughter. Because Kate offered me kindness I didn't deserve. Because maybe I'm tired of running. Or maybe I'm just tired. Kate's hand moved toward his, stopped halfway, uncertain. Cole saw the movement, saw the hesitation, reached out and closed the distance, taking her hand in his. They sat like that as darkness fell. Three broken people holding on to each other because holding on was the only thing keeping them from falling apart. Day 4, the peace shattered. Cole was in town buying supplies when he heard the voices coming from the general store. Two men well-dressed speaking with the casual arrogance of people who'd never been told no in their entire lives. He recognized them from Kate's description. Victor Webb and Daniel Price. Webb was heavy red-faced sweat staining his expensive shirt despite the early hour. Price was leaner with dead eyes and a smile that never reached them. They stood at the counter, Mrs. Porter nodding nervously as they went through her account books. Cole walked in, let the door swing shut behind him with enough noise to announce his presence. Both men turned, assessed him with the quick calculation of predators sizing up potential threats. "Help you?" Webb's voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of a man who'd spent years convincing people to trust him. "Just here for coffee." Cole moved to the shelves, deliberately casual. "Heard you gentlemen run things around here." "We're businessmen," Price said. "Nothing more." "Successful businessmen, from what I hear. Must be nice owning half the town." Webb's eyes narrowed. "Do I know you?" "Name's Harper. Cole Harper. New in town. Staying long." "Depends." "On what?" Cole held Webb's gaze. "And whether Silver Creek turns out to be the kind of place a man can put down roots, or the kind of place where asking questions gets you killed." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Price's hand moved toward his belt, not quite touching his gun, but close enough to make the threat clear. "That's an odd thing to say, Mr. Harper." "Is it? I heard Thomas Hayes died asking questions. Something about $3,000 in debt and land that certain people wanted." Webb's face went from red to white in seconds. Mrs. Porter suddenly found something fascinating to study on the floor. "Thomas Hayes died in an accident," Webb said carefully. "A terrible tragedy, but an accident nonetheless. Funny how that accident left his land right between your properties. Worth a lot more combined, I'd imagine. 50,000 more. Silence, heavy and dangerous." "Mr. Harper," Price said, his voice soft as a snake's hiss. "I don't know who you think you are or what you think you know, but this is a small town. And in small towns, strangers who stir up trouble tend to have short stays. Very short stays." Cole smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact of life, just like it's a fact that Thomas Hayes climbed drunk scaffolding and fell. Just like it's a fact that his daughter is a grief-stricken child with an overactive imagination. Just like it's a fact that nobody in this town believes a word she says. Maybe nobody's been listening to the right person." Cole paid for his coffee, walked out, but he could feel their eyes on his back like target marks. He made it halfway down the street before Sheriff Tucker stepped out of an alley. "Mr. Harper, walk with me." It wasn't a request. Tucker led him to the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open prairie. The sheriff was a big man, running to fat with the tired eyes of someone who'd stopped caring about justice long ago. His star glinted in the sunlight, mocking the oath it represented. "I know what you're doing," Tucker said without preamble, "and I'm here to tell you to stop. I'm not doing anything except buying coffee. You're asking questions about Thomas Hayes, about Webb and Price, about things that are none of your concern. A child witnessed a murder. That seems like everybody's concern. Emma Hayes is a traumatized little girl. She thinks she saw something that didn't happen. I investigated. It was an accident." "What kind of investigation did you do, Sheriff? Talk to witnesses, examine the scene? Or did you just take Webb and Price's word for it and call it a day?" Tucker's face flushed. "Careful, Harper. You don't want to make enemies in this town." "Too late. Seems I already have." The sheriff stepped closer. Close enough that Cole could smell whiskey on his breath. Close enough to see the fear beneath the bluster. "Listen to me very carefully. This town runs a certain way. Has for years. People who accept that get along fine. People who don't," he let the sentence hang. "Accidents happen. Like what happened to Thomas Hayes. Exactly like what happened to Thomas Hayes." Tucker's voice dropped to a whisper. "And if you're not careful, exactly like what might happen to that little girl you've taken such an interest in, or to Kate Mitchell. Shame if her boarding house caught fire one night. These old buildings, they go up so fast." Cole's hand moved to his gun before he could stop himself. Tucker saw the movement, smiled coldly. Go ahead, draw on a lawman. Give me an excuse to put you down legal-like. For 5 seconds, they stood frozen. Cole's hand on his gun. Tucker waiting. The prairie wind blowing dust between them. Then Cole forced himself to step back, to unclench his fist, to breathe. This conversation is over, he said. It's just beginning. You've got until sundown tomorrow to be out of Silver Creek. If you're still here, I'll arrest you for vagrancy, disturbing the peace, whatever charge sticks. And while you're sitting in my jail well, accidents happen there too. Tucker walked away, leaving Cole standing at the edge of town, hands shaking with rage he couldn't release. When he got back to the boarding house, Kate took one look at his face and ushered Emma upstairs. What happened? She asked when they were alone. Cole told her, all of it. The confrontation at the store, Tucker's threats, the deadline. Kate's face went pale. You have to leave, tonight, if they're threatening Emma. I'm not leaving. Cole, you don't understand what these men are capable of. Thomas stood up to them, and look what happened. You think they'll hesitate to do the same to you, Emma to me? That's exactly why I can't leave, because if I do, Emma will spend the rest of her life knowing that everyone who could have helped her chose not to, that everyone who could have fought for her chose to run instead, and she deserves better than that. Kate stared at him. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe, but I'll die standing up instead of running away. I'm tired of running, Kate. 4 years is enough. She moved closer, put her hands on his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath her palms. And if you die, what happens to Emma, then what happens to me? Then you'll survive, like you've been surviving, like Emma's been surviving, because that's what strong people do. I don't want to be strong, Kate whispered. I want to be safe. I want Emma to be safe. She didn't finish, but Cole heard what she didn't say. I want you to be safe. I want you to stay. I want this thing between us to have a chance to become something real. He pulled her close, felt her melt against him, all the careful walls she'd built crumbling in his arms. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in Kate's kitchen, while upstairs Emma pretended not to listen. There's something else, Cole said finally. Something I need to tell you. Kate pulled back, looked up at him. What? Tucker mentioned that Webb and Price brought in someone from Colorado, a hired gun. He didn't say the name, but I know who it is. Has to be. Who? Cameron? Garrett Stone, the man who killed my family. The blood drained from Kate's face. You're sure? No, but it fits. They need someone to handle their problems. Someone with no connection to Silver Creek who won't hesitate to kill. Garrett's perfect for the job, and he's been hunting me for 4 years. If Webb and Price put out the word that they were looking for a killer, Garrett would have heard about it, would have come running on the chance it might lead him to me. Then you definitely need to leave tonight before he finds you. He's already found me. I can feel it. That's how Garrett works. He watches. He waits. He learns your weaknesses, finds the people you care about, and then he strikes when you're most vulnerable. Kate's hands tightened on his shirt. Emma, Cole agreed. He'll use her to get to me, just like Webb and Price are using her to control this town. Just like everyone in Emma's life has used her for something. So what do we do? Cole looked toward the stairs, toward where Emma waited, listening to every word with those amber eyes that saw too much. We fight, he said, all of us, together. Emma came downstairs then, no longer pretending she hadn't been listening. Her face was set in that stubborn line that meant she'd made up her mind about something, and hell itself couldn't change it. I'm testifying, she said. Emma, I saw them murder Pa. I'm the only witness, and I'm not going to hide anymore. Kate knelt down, took Emma's hands. Oh, sweetheart, you don't understand. These men are dangerous. If you testify, they'll come after you. They'll say terrible things. They'll try to make you look like a liar. Let them try. I know what I saw, and the truth doesn't change just because people don't want to hear it. Cole felt something swell in his chest. Pride, fear, a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, courage was contagious. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it right. We need help, real help, someone who can't be bought or intimidated. I might know someone, Kate said. My cousin Margaret. She's a territorial investigator based in Helena. If I write to her, if I explain what's happening here, she might come. Will she believe us? She'll believe evidence. We need to give her evidence, not just Emma's testimony, not just suspicions. Hard proof that Webb and Price conspired to kill Thomas and are now trying to steal Emma's inheritance. How do we get that proof? Kate stood up pacing. Her mind was working. Cole could see it. Years of running a business, of managing accounts and people and problems all coming together. Webb owns the bank. That means records, ledgers, proof of Thomas's debt and what happened to his land after he died. Price has the cattle operation. That means contracts, deals, money changing hands. If we can connect them to Garrett Stone, if we can prove they hired him, that's conspiracy to commit murder. And how do we get access to bank records and business contracts? We don't. Margaret does. She has legal authority, but she needs a reason to investigate. She needs a complaint filed with the territorial government. Emma tugged on Cole's sleeve. There's something else, something I didn't tell Sheriff Tucker because I knew he wouldn't believe me. They both looked at her. After Pa fell, after Mr. Price looked up and saw me in the rafters, he said something to Mr. Webb. I heard it clear as day. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. He said the girl saw. We'll have to deal with her too. The room went cold. That's not just murder, Kate breathed. That's premeditated. They knew Emma was a witness and they planned to eliminate her. Why didn't you tell Tucker this? Cole asked. Because Tucker told me to stop lying before I even finished telling him what I saw. He didn't want to hear it, didn't want to know. So I stopped talking. Cole pulled Emma close, felt her small body against his fragile and fierce at the same time. You won't have to face them alone. I promise, but promises are dangerous things, Emma said, echoing words he'd told her days ago. Yeah, they are, but I'm making this one anyway. That night, Kate wrote to Margaret, a long, detailed letter explaining everything. Thomas Hayes's murder, Emma's testimony, Webb and Price's threats, Tucker's corruption, the hiring of Garrett Stone. She sealed it with wax and gave it to the stagecoach driver the next morning with the instructions to deliver it personally. How long until she gets here? Cole asked. A week, maybe 2 if she needs time to prepare a case. We might not have that long. Tucker gave me until sundown today to leave town. So we make sure he can't arrest you. You stay here on my property. Technically, he needs a warrant to come inside. And by the time he gets one, Margaret will be here. It was a thin plan, full of holes, but it was the only plan they had. Cole moved his things from room 4 to the small storage room off the kitchen. Not a guest anymore. Something else. Something undefined but important. Emma claimed the room next to Kate's, hung her one spare dress in the closet, put her wooden rabbit on the nightstand. Small gestures of permanence that both terrified and thrilled everyone involved. Days passed, slow, tense, waiting for the hammer to fall. It fell on the 9th night. Cole was sleeping light the way he'd learned to sleep when staying alive meant being ready to move at any moment. So when he heard the sound, he was awake instantly, fully alert, hand on his gun, glass breaking. Downstairs, near the back door, he moved silently, bare feet on wood floors, gun raised. Moonlight filtered through windows, painting everything in silver and shadow. He could hear breathing. Someone in the kitchen. More than one person. Cole eased around the corner, gun leveled. 3 men, rough-looking types with the kind of faces that advertised violence for hire. One was jimmying the lock on the pantry door. Another stood watch. The third was pouring something from a can onto the kitchen floor. Kerosene. Cole's blood turned to ice. That's far enough, he said quietly. All 3 men froze, turned, saw the gun in his hand and the look in his eyes that said he knew exactly how to use it. Easy friend, the one with the kerosene said. We don't want trouble. Then you shouldn't be in this house in the middle of the night with enough kerosene to burn it to the ground. We're just following orders. Whose orders? No answer. But Cole saw the truth in their faces. Webb and Price, of course. Get out, Cole said. Now, before I decide that Silver Creek needs 3 fewer arsonists. They went, quickly, stumbling over each other in their hurry to escape. Cole followed them to the door, watched them run into the darkness, then barred the door and checked every window in the house. When he turned around, Kate was standing at the bottom of the stairs in her nightgown, lamp in hand, face pale. They were going to burn it down, she whispered, with us inside. Yeah, we could have died, Emma could have died. But we didn't, and now we know how far they're willing to go. Kate set down the lamp, walked to him, put her hands on his face and pulled him down into a kiss that tasted like desperation and need, and something that might have been the beginning of love if they'd been different people in a different place. When they broke apart, both of them were shaking. I can't lose you, Kate said. I barely just found you, and I can't lose you. You won't. You can't promise that. Nobody can promise that. Then I'll promise something else. I promise that every day I'm alive, I'll fight for you, for Emma, for this, for us. And if the day comes when I can't fight anymore, I'll make damn sure I take our enemies down with me. It was a dark promise, a bloody promise, but it was honest, and honesty was all Cole had to give. Upstairs, Emma was standing in her doorway, eyes wide in the darkness. I heard glass breaking, she said. It's okay, Kate assured her. Everything's okay. Are they coming for us? Cole climbed the stairs, knelt down so he was eye level with Emma. They already tried, they failed, and they won't get another chance. How can you be sure? Because I won't let them. Neither will Kate. And tomorrow we're going to start fighting back. Really fighting back. No more waiting. No more hiding. We take the fight to them. Emma nodded slowly. Then she threw her arms around Cole's neck and held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that kept trying to shake her loose. Don't leave, she whispered. Please don't leave. I'm not going anywhere. We're family now, and family sticks together. Promise, Rita. Cole thought about all the promises he'd broken, all the people he had failed, all the times he'd run instead of standing his ground. And he thought about this small, fierce girl who'd survived 23 days on nothing but stubbornness. About Kate, who'd survived 3 years of loneliness and was learning to hope again. About the life he could have if he just stopped running long enough to reach for it. I promise, he said, on my daughter's grave, on everything I am, I promise. Morning brought Margaret Ross. She arrived on the noon stage tall and sharp-eyed, wearing a traveling dress that somehow managed to look both practical and authoritative. She carried a leather satchel full of papers and had the air of someone who'd seen enough of the world to be surprised by very little of it. Kate met her at the door with a hug that spoke of childhood summers and shared secrets, and the kind of bond that survives years and distance. Kate, Margaret said, pulling back to study her cousin's face. You look good. Tired, but good. You came. You wrote me a letter that made my blood boil. Of course I came. Margaret's eyes found Cole. You must be Harper. Cole. Margaret Ross, territorial investigator for the Helena office. Kate says you've been making enemies. It's a talent. Good. I like men with that particular talent. Usually means they're too stubborn to know when they're beaten. She set down her bag. Now where's this girl who witnessed a murder? Emma stepped forward, small, steady, meeting Margaret's eyes without flinching. I'm Emma Hayes, and I saw Victor Webb and Daniel Price push my father off scaffolding. Watched him fall 40 feet, heard his neck break. Then I heard Mr. Price say they'd have to deal with me, too. Margaret knelt down, studied Emma's face with the same intensity Emma studied hers. Two people taking each other's measure. And you're willing to testify to that in court? Yes, ma'am. Even knowing that good lawyers will try to tear your testimony apart, that they'll call you a liar, that they'll say grief made you imagine things. They can say whatever they want. Truth is truth. Margaret smiled. It was the first genuine smile Cole had seen from her. You're going to do just fine. Now let's talk about building a case that even the best lawyers can't tear apart. They spent the afternoon going over everything. Emma's testimony, Kate's knowledge of the town's power structure, Cole's confrontations with Webb, Price, and Tucker. Margaret took notes in a precise hand, asking questions that cut straight to the heart of things. We need 3 things, she said finally. Proof of financial motive, proof of opportunity, and proof of conspiracy. Emma's testimony gives us opportunity. She saw them at the scene, but we need more. What about the arson attempt last night? Kate asked. 3 men you can't identify following orders you can't prove came from Webb and Price. It's suspicious, but not proof. So what do we need? Margaret tapped her pencil against her notebook. We need someone else who saw something, someone credible, an adult, preferably someone with standing in the community. Everyone in this town is either scared or bought, Cole said. Not everyone. Kate's voice was thoughtful. Reverend Parker was at the church that day. Thomas was working on the steeple. Parker would have been there preparing for Sunday services. Did he see what happened? I don't know, but we can ask. Margaret stood. Then let's go ask, right now, before word gets around that I'm in town and someone convinces the good Reverend to develop a convenient case of amnesia. They found Parker at the church exactly where Kate said he'd be. He was a man in his 50s with the kind of face that showed every mistake he'd ever made. Alcohol had carved lines around his eyes. Guilt had bent his shoulders. But there was something in him that hadn't broken yet. Some core of decency that survived despite everything. He saw them coming and his face went pale. Mrs. Mitchell, I heard you had visitors. Reverend Parker, this is my cousin, Margaret Ross. She's a territorial investigator. We need to ask you about the day Thomas Hayes died. Parker's hand started to shake. I told Sheriff Tucker everything I know. We're not asking what you told Tucker. We're asking what you saw. For a long moment, Parker just stood there. Then he walked into the church, motioning for them to follow. Inside, it was cool and dim. Light filtered through stained glass, painting their faces in reds and blues. I was here, Parker said. His voice echoed in the empty space. Behind the altar. I'd been drinking. I didn't want Thomas to see me like that, so I hid. I'm not proud of it, but that's what happened. And, Margaret prompted, Webb and Price came in, started yelling at Thomas about his debt. I heard every word. Webb said Thomas had run out of time. Price said they'd take the land one way or another. Thomas told them to go to hell. Parker's voice broke. Then I heard Thomas scream, heard something heavy hit the ground. I looked out and saw him lying there, neck twisted, wrong blood coming from his ears. And I saw Webb and Price standing at the top of the scaffolding, looking down at what they'd done. Why didn't you tell anyone? Cole asked. Because I'm a drunk and a coward. Parker's eyes were wet. Because Webb came to me 3 days later and reminded me that he knew about the money I'd taken from the collection plate 10 years ago, the money I'd used to pay gambling debts. He said if I talked, he'd make sure everyone knew. I'd lose the church, my pension, everything. So you stayed quiet. For a month, but then I heard about Emma. Heard she was sitting on those steps waiting for a father who was never coming home. And I couldn't, his voice broke completely. I couldn't be that coward anymore. I wrote to you, Mrs. Mitchell, asked you to contact someone who could help. It was all I had the courage to do. Kate's hand found his. You did the right thing. It's not too late. Will you testify, Margaret asked, in court under oath? Parker looked at Emma, at this small girl who'd been brave enough to tell the truth when grown men had been too scared to stand beside her. Yes, he said, I'll testify, even if it costs me everything. Margaret wrote it all down. Then she had Parker sign a statement right there in the church with Kate and Cole as witnesses. When they stepped back outside, the sun was setting, painting Silver Creek in shades of gold that made it look almost beautiful, almost innocent. We have a case now, Margaret said. Not just Emma's word, not just suspicions. We have an adult witness, a reverend, someone the court will have to take seriously. Webb and Price will fight back, Cole warned. Let them. I've been doing this job for 10 years. I've seen corrupt men in positions of power. I've seen them threaten and bribe and kill to keep their secrets. But I've also seen them fall, and they always fall the same way. One truth at a time. They walked back to the boarding house together, a strange little family bound by something stronger than blood, bound by choice. That night after Emma was asleep, Cole found Kate on the porch. She was sitting in her rocking chair, staring at nothing, lost in thought. You okay? He asked. I'm terrified, but I'm also more alive than I've felt in 3 years. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Kate looked up at him. We're really doing this, taking on the most powerful men in Silver Creek. Looks like. We could lose everything. We could, or we could win. And if we win, Emma gets justice. This town gets its soul back. And maybe we get a future that doesn't involve running or hiding or being afraid all the time. Kate stood, moved into his arms, rested her head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat. I'm falling in love with you, she said quietly. I don't want to. It's too fast and too dangerous and too complicated, but I am. Cole's arms tightened around her. Yeah, me too. What happens if you're wrong? What happens if Garrett Stone really is here? What happens when he comes for you? Then I'll deal with him. Same way I dealt with his brothers. By killing him. If I have to. Kate pulled back, looked up at him with eyes that held tears she refused to shed. I don't want you to be a killer, Cole. I want you to be the man who fixed my steps and made Emma laugh and held me when I couldn't sleep. I want you to be good. I'm not good, Kate. I'm just a man who's trying not to be as bad as he used to be. That's all I can offer. Then that's what I'll take. Because even your almost good is better than most men's best. She kissed him, long and slow and deep. A promise and a prayer and a plea all at once. When they broke apart, the night was full dark. Stars blazed overhead in the vast Montana sky. Somewhere out there, Garrett Stone was waiting. Somewhere Webb and Price were planning their next move. Somewhere the machinery of justice and corruption was grinding toward an inevitable collision. But for now, in this moment, Cole Harper had his arms around a woman who believed in him, had a child sleeping upstairs who trusted him, had a purpose that wasn't just survival. For now, that was enough. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. The knock came 3 days later. Cole was teaching Emma to play checkers on the front porch when a man rode up on a horse too fine for someone who made honest money. He wore a suit that cost more than most families earned in a year, and his smile was the kind that made Cole's hand drift toward his gun without conscious thought. Mrs. Mitchell. The man dismounted with practiced ease. I'm looking for Emma Hayes. Kate appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face went carefully blank in the way it did when she sensed danger. Who's asking? Lawrence Gray. I'm Emma's uncle, her mother's brother. I've come to take her home. The checkerboard clattered to the porch floor. Emma stood so fast her chair tipped over. I don't have an uncle. Gray's smile never wavered. Your mother was my sister, child. I only just learned of your father's death, or I would have come sooner. He pulled papers from his jacket. I have letters here from your mother acknowledging me as family. I've filed a petition in Helena for emergency custody. Cole moved to stand between Gray and Emma. Emma's never mentioned any uncle. Neither did her father. Children forget. It's been years since I've seen her. She was barely walking the last time. Gray's eyes were cold despite the smile. But the law is quite clear, Mr. Harper. Blood relatives have first claim to orphan children. And I am blood. Emma's not an orphan. She has us. You, Gray looked Cole up and down with calculated disdain. A drifter with no legal standing. No formal adoption papers. No proof of relation. He turned to Kate. And you, Mrs. Mitchell. A widow running a boarding house. Hardly a stable home for a young girl. Margaret appeared behind Kate, having heard everything. Mr. Gray, I'm Margaret Ross, territorial investigator. May I see those letters? Gray handed them over with the confidence of a man who believed his forgeries were perfect. Margaret studied them carefully, her face revealing nothing. These will need to be authenticated, she said finally, verified by a judge. Of course, the hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks from today in Helena. I'll be staying at the boarding house here until then. Gray's smile widened. I do hope you have a room available, Mrs. Mitchell. It would be so convenient to be close to my niece, to get reacquainted. Emma's hand found Cole's. Her grip was crushing. I'm afraid we're fully booked, Kate said coldly. Pity. I'll find accommodation elsewhere then, but I will be seeing Emma regularly. The law requires that custodial transitions be handled delicately. I'm sure you understand. He tipped his hat. Good day. They watched him ride away. Nobody spoke until he disappeared around the corner. Then Emma said very quietly, He's lying. I know, sweetheart. My mama's name was Elizabeth, not whatever he said, and she didn't have any brothers. She told me that once, said she always wanted a sibling, but was an only child. Margaret was already making notes. That's good, Emma. What else do you remember about your mother's family? Her maiden name was Thompson. She grew up in Billings. Her parents died when she was 16. That's why she came to Silver Creek, to find work. Can you prove any of that? Cole asked Margaret. I can try. Birth certificates, death records, census data. If Gray's story doesn't match the facts, we can expose him, but it's going to take time. We have 2 weeks. Then I better get started. Margaret left that afternoon for Helena, taking the letters Gray had provided. Cole watched her go with a sick feeling in his stomach. 2 weeks to prove Gray was a fraud. 2 weeks before a judge might decide to hand Emma over to a man who'd been hired to steal her inheritance. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Cole found her sitting on the back steps, staring at the stars. "You thinking about running?" he asked. "Would you come with me? Anywhere." Emma smiled, but it was sad. "That's not a real answer. If I ran, you'd be breaking the law. They'd arrest you. Kate, too. We'd figure it out." "No." Emma's voice was firm. "I'm not running. Pa didn't run from those men. He stood his ground. So will I." Cole sat down beside her. "You're braver than most adults I know." "I'm scared." "Brave doesn't mean not scared. It means being scared and doing what's right anyway." They sat in silence for a while. Then Emma said, "If I have to go with Mr. Gray, if the judge says I have to, will you come for me? I won't let it get that far." "But if it does," Cole looked at her, this small girl with amber eyes who'd survived so much already. "If they take you, I'll burn the world down to get you back. That's a promise." Emma leaned against his shoulder. "I believe you." Margaret returned 6 days later with news that made everyone breathe easier. Lawrence Gray's real name is Lawrence Kane, she announced, spreading documents across Kate's kitchen table. "He's a con man out of Missouri, wanted in 3 territories for fraud, forgery, and theft. The letters are fake. I had a handwriting expert compare them to documents your mother signed, Emma. They don't match." Emma's face lit with relief. "So he can't take me?" "Not a chance, but there's more." Margaret pulled out another document. "Gray's been receiving payments from a bank account in Cheyenne. The account belongs to a shell company. That shell company is owned by another company, and that company owned jointly by Victor Webb and Daniel Price." The room went silent. "They hired him," Kate breathed. "They hired Gray to steal Emma's inheritance." "That's my theory, and if I'm right, it's not just fraud. It's conspiracy, which means Webb and Price are looking at serious jail time." Cole leaned forward. "Can you prove it in court?" "I can prove the paper trail. Whether that's enough to convict depends on the judge and how good their lawyers are, but combined with Emma's testimony about the murder, combined with Reverend Parker's statement, we have a real case." "When's the hearing?" 8 days. We need to be ready." Those 8 days passed in a blur of preparation. Margaret drilled Emma on her testimony, helped her understand what questions the defense would ask, how to stay calm, how to tell the truth clearly without being intimidated. Kate taught Emma how to sit properly in court, how to speak clearly, how to look at the judge instead of at Gray or his lawyer. Cole taught Emma something different. "If something goes wrong," he said one morning, "if Gray or Webb or Price try something during the hearing, I want you to drop to the floor immediately. Don't think, don't hesitate. Just drop and cover your head. Understand, you think they'll try something violent in court. Desperate men do desperate things. Better to be prepared and wrong than unprepared and dead." Emma practiced dropping to the floor until it became muscle memory. Kate watched with a sick expression, but didn't argue. They all knew Cole was right. On the 7th day, Sheriff Tucker came to the boarding house. "Harper," he called from the street, "got a warrant here. Judge says you need to come answer some questions." Cole stepped onto the porch. "What kind of questions?" "The kind about why you've been making threats against upstanding citizens. Webb and Price filed a complaint. Says you've been harassing them, intimidating them, making wild accusations. That's garbage and you know it. Don't matter what I know. Matters what the judge thinks. Now you can come peaceful or I can bring deputies and drag you. Your choice." Margaret appeared beside Cole. "Sheriff Mr. Harper is under my protection as part of an ongoing investigation. Any arrest would interfere with territorial business." Tucker's face darkened. "You got paperwork proving that." Margaret pulled a document from her pocket. "Official seal of the territorial government." Tucker read it, jaw working. "This says he's a witness, doesn't say he can't be arrested. It says any action taken against him has to be approved by my office. Do you have that approval?" Tucker's hand moved toward his gun. For a moment, Cole thought it was going to end right there. Gunfight in the street. But then Tucker saw something in Margaret's eyes, something that said she had more power than a small-town sheriff could fight. "This ain't over," Tucker growled. "Webb and Price own this town. They own the judge. They own everybody. You're just delaying the inevitable." He left, but his threat hung in the air like smoke. "We need to be careful," Margaret said quietly. "Very careful. They're getting desperate." The Helena courthouse was bigger than Emma expected. Stone and marble and wood polished to a shine that spoke of power and permanence. She held Cole's hand on one side, Kate's on the other, as they climbed the steps. Inside the courtroom smelled like old paper and furniture wax. Judge Morrison sat behind the bench, an older man with white hair and eyes that had seen every kind of human foolishness. He looked at Emma with something that might have been kindness. "This is the custody hearing regarding Emma Hayes," he said. "Mr. Gray, you claim to be the child's maternal uncle." Gray stood, confident, smooth. "Yes, Your Honor, my sister Elizabeth entrusted Emma to me before her death. And you have proof of this relationship." "Letters, Your Honor, written in my sister's hand." Margaret stood. "Your Honor, may I approach?" The judge nodded. Margaret handed him her documents. Her investigation. The proof that Gray was lying. Judge Morrison read for a long time. His expression didn't change. But when he looked up, his eyes had gone cold. "Mr. Gray, these letters are forgeries." "Your Honor, I can assure you." "Handwriting analysis confirms it. Furthermore, birth records show that Elizabeth Thompson Hayes had no siblings. She was an only child." The judge's voice cut like a blade. "Your real name is Lawrence Kane. You're wanted for fraud in 3 states." The courtroom erupted. Gray's face went white. His lawyer started to speak, but Morrison silenced him with a look. "Deputies, take Mr. Kane into custody." Gray stood as deputies approached. For a second, Cole thought he might run. But then something shifted in Gray's face. Desperation. The look of a man with nothing left to lose. "Fine," he shouted. "You want the truth. Webb and Price paid me $5,000 to take the girl and sell her land. They killed Thomas Hayes, and they're going to kill all of you if you don't stop." The confession echoed through the courtroom. Judge Morrison's gavel came down like thunder. "Mr. Kane, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted kidnapping. Deputies, take him away." As they dragged Gray out, he kept shouting, "They'll kill you. Webb and Price kill anyone who crosses them. Ask Emma, ask her what she saw." The doors closed. Silence fell. Judge Morrison looked at Emma. "Miss Hayes, I'm sorry you had to hear that. The custody claim is denied. Mr. Harper. Mrs. Mitchell, the child will remain in your care until formal adoption proceedings can be completed. Court is adjourned." Emma collapsed into Cole's arms, sobbing with relief. Kate wrapped around them both. Margaret stood nearby, satisfaction written across her face. They'd won. But as they left the courthouse, Cole saw a figure watching from across the street. Tall, scarred, familiar in a way that made his blood run cold. Garrett Stone. Their eyes met. Garrett smiled. Not the friendly kind of smile, the kind that promised violence and death and long postponed revenge. Then he was gone, disappeared into the crowd before Cole could react. "What is it?" Kate asked, seeing his face. "He's here." "Who? Garrett, he's here." They made it back to Silver Creek without incident, but Cole couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on them, couldn't stop checking over his shoulder, couldn't sleep that night listening to every creak and groan of the boarding house settling. Around midnight, he gave up, dressed quietly, checked his gun, slipped downstairs. Kate was waiting in the kitchen. "You felt it too," she said. "Yeah." "What do? We wait. Garrett won't strike until he's ready, until he's learned our patterns, our weaknesses. That's how he works." "How long?" "Days, maybe a week." Kate moved to him, pressed her hands against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. "I don't want to lose you. Not now, not when we've just found each other." Cole covered her hands with his. "You won't." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll fight. And I can promise that if Garrett takes me down, he won't be around to celebrate." They stood like that in the darkness. 2 people holding each other against the storm they both knew was coming. The murder trial began 3 days later. The courtroom was packed. Half of Silver Creek showed up to watch their most powerful citizens face justice. Webb and Price sat at the defense table looking confident. Their lawyer, a slick man named Ashford, wore expensive clothes and a smile that said he'd never lost a case. Prosecutor James Burton was younger, hungrier, with the fire of someone who actually believed in justice. He laid out his case methodically. Thomas Hayes's debt, Webb and Price's financial motive, the land that would have made them rich, Emma's testimony about what she saw. Then he called Emma to the stand. She climbed up, sat in the witness chair that was too big for her, looked at the courtroom full of adults, and didn't flinch. State your name for the record. Emma Jean Hayes. I'm 8 years old. Emma, can you tell us what happened on July 15th? Emma took a breath, looked at Cole. He nodded. I followed my pa to the church that morning. He was working on the steeple. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I wanted to watch him work. So I climbed up into the rafters and hid. What did you see? Mr. Webb and Mr. Price came in. They started yelling at Pa about money he owed them. Mr. Webb grabbed Pa's arm. He said, "You'll pay one way or another." And then Mr. Price moved behind Pa. Her voice caught. He put both hands on Pa's back and pushed. Hard. Pa tried to grab the railing, but he missed, and then he fell. The courtroom was silent except for someone crying in the back. What happened after your father fell? I heard him hit the ground. It sounded like wood breaking. And I heard Mr. Price say to Mr. Webb, "The girl saw. We'll have to deal with her too." Webb jumped to his feet. That's a lie. Judge Morrison's gavel came down. Mr. Webb, sit down or I'll have you removed. Burton continued. Did you tell anyone what you saw? I told Sheriff Tucker. He said I was lying, that grief makes children imagine things. Then he walked away. No further questions. Ashford stood for cross-examination. His smile was sharp as broken glass. Emma, you loved your father very much, didn't you? Yes, sir. And you miss him terribly. Every day. When people miss someone, sometimes their minds play tricks, make them see things that didn't really happen. I know what I saw. You were hiding in dusty rafters 40 feet away. Is that correct? Yes, but I could see from 40 feet away in dusty light. Can you be absolutely certain about what you saw? Yes. Even though you were scared, even though you just watched your father fall to his death. I saw Mr. Price push him. I saw it. Ashford changed tactics. This story about Mr. Price saying you'd have to be dealt with, that's very convenient, isn't it? Very dramatic, almost like something from a dime novel. Emma's face flushed. It's what happened. Or it's what you wish happened, because if they were trying to hurt you, that would make you important, make people pay attention to you. And you've been starved for attention since your father died, haven't you? Sitting on those steps for 23 days, making a spectacle of yourself. Objection. Burton was on his feet. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained. Mr. Ashford, move on. But the damage was done. Emma's eyes were filled with tears. Her hands were shaking. Ashford pressed harder. Isn't it true that you've been living with a stranger, a drifter named Cole Harper, who has a criminal past? He's not a stranger. He's my family. Family, you've known him for less than a month. And in that time, hasn't he been filling your head with stories, teaching you what to say, coaching you? No. Hasn't he told you that the only way to keep living in Mrs. Mitchell's nice house is to make sure the men who your father owed money to go to prison? That's not true. Emma was crying now. Cole started to stand, but Margaret's hand on his arm stopped him. No further questions, Ashford said smugly. Burton stood for redirect. Emma, did anyone tell you what to say today? No, sir. Did Mr. Harper coach you? He told me to tell the truth, that's all. And are you telling the truth? Emma looked directly at the jury, at 12 men who held her future in their hands. I saw Mr. Price push my father. I saw Mr. Webb grab him first, and I heard them say they'd have to deal with me. That's the truth, and I'll say it as many times as I have to until someone believes me. The courtroom was silent. Then Burton called Reverend Parker. Parker took the stand looking like he'd aged 10 years, but his voice was steady as he described what he'd seen, what he'd heard, the confrontation between Webb Price and Thomas Hayes, the push, the fall, the blood. Ashford tried to destroy him the same way he tried to destroy Emma. You're a drunk, aren't you, Reverend? Yes. You've stolen from your own church. Yes. So why should anyone believe you? Parker looked at Emma, at this brave little girl who testified despite everything. Because I'm tired of being a coward. Because that child had more courage than I've had in my entire life. And because telling the truth is the only thing I have left. He pulled out his journal. The one he'd kept since the day Thomas died. Every detail recorded in careful handwriting. Dated. Signed. The prosecution rested. The defense called character witnesses for Webb and Price. Businessmen who praised their generosity. Church members who spoke of their donations. People who owed them money and feared them too much to tell the truth. But it wasn't enough. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Victor Webb, guilty. Daniel Price, guilty. The courtroom erupted. Webb shouted that it was a travesty. Price sat silent, face white as bone. Judge Morrison's gavel rang out. Gentlemen, you have been found guilty of the murder of Thomas Hayes. I sentence you both to life in prison without possibility of parole. Deputies, take them away. As they were led out in chains, Webb turned to look at Emma. Pure hatred burned in his eyes. This isn't over, he mouthed. But it was. The battle was won. Justice had been served. Emma collapsed into Cole's arms, sobbing with relief and exhaustion. Kate wrapped around them both. Margaret stood nearby, allowing herself a small smile of victory. They'd done it. Against all odds, against corruption and money and power, they'd won. The celebration lasted all of 10 minutes. They were walking back to where they'd tied the horses when Cole felt it. That prickling at the back of his neck that had kept him alive for 4 years. The sense that something was wrong. He pushed Emma toward Kate. Get her to the horses. Now, Shishama. Now, Kate grabbed Emma and ran. Cole turned hand on his gun. Garrett Stone stepped out of an alley 20 feet away. He held a rifle, aimed at Cole's chest. Been waiting for this, Garrett said. His voice was rough, like he'd spent years shouting and smoking and not caring about the damage. 4 years of tracking you. 4 years of planning. Thought about all the ways I could make you suffer. Your brothers murdered my family. They were doing a job. You made it personal when you killed them. It was already personal. They burned my house with my wife and daughter inside. Details. Garrett smiled. Cold. Empty. Now I'm going to return the favor. That little girl you've been playing father to. That woman you have been courting, I'm going to kill them both. Slow, and you're going to watch. He swung the rifle toward where Kate and Emma were running. Cole drew and fired in one motion. The bullet caught Garrett in the shoulder, spinning him around. His rifle clattered to the ground. But Garrett was fast, pulled a knife from his belt with his offhand and charged. They collided, went down hard. Garrett was all rage and strength, and 4 years of hatred poured into every move. The knife slashed toward Cole's face. Cole caught his wrist, twisted. But Garrett kneed him in the ribs, breaking his grip. The knife came down. Cole rolled, felt the blade bite into his side, shallow but painful. Hot blood spreading across his shirt. They fought in the street like animals. No skill, no strategy, just violence and desperation. Cole landed a punch that broke Garrett's nose. Garrett slammed Cole's head against the ground hard enough to see stars. Then Garrett had the knife at Cole's throat. Any last words? Yeah. Cole's voice was steady despite the blood filling his mouth. I'm not sorry. The knife pressed down. Cole felt skin part, felt blood begin to flow. Then a gunshot rang out. Garrett jerked, looked down at the red stains spreading across his chest, looked up at Kate standing 20 feet away, smoking pistol in her shaking hands. You shot me, Garrett said, sounding surprised. I'll do it again if you don't get off him, Kate said. Her voice shook, but her hands were steady. Garrett laughed, coughed blood, slumped sideways off Cole. Cole scrambled to his feet, kicked the knife away, stood over Garrett with his own gun drawn. Do it, Garrett whispered. Finish it. Cole's finger tightened on the trigger. 4 years of running, 4 years of fear, 4 years of looking over his shoulder. It could all end right now. One bullet, one death, freedom. Cole, Kate's voice. Don't. He'll come for us again. No, he won't. Look at him. Cole looked, really looked. Garrett was bleeding out. The chest wound was fatal. Kate's bullet had pierced his lung. He had minutes at most. Let him die knowing you were better than him, Kate said. That you chose mercy over revenge. That's the only victory that matters. Cole lowered his gun. Garrett smiled. Blood stained his teeth. Knew you were weak, just like your wife, just like your daughter. The words hit like physical blows, but Cole didn't raise his gun again. My wife and daughter were the strongest people I knew, and they wouldn't want me to become you. He turned his back on Garrett, walked to Kate, took the gun from her shaking hands, pulled her close. Behind them, Garrett choked, gasped, made a wet rattling sound, then silence. Sheriff's deputies arrived, found Cole bleeding from multiple wounds, found Kate in shock, found Emma crying but unharmed, found Garrett Stone dead in the street. The deputy in charge took statements, ruled it self-defense, told Cole he was lucky to be alive. Cole didn't feel lucky. He felt tired, bone deep, exhausted in a way sleep couldn't cure. The doctor stitched him up, 13 stitches in his side, 7 more along his jaw where Garrett's knife had caught him before Kate fired. The one on his face would scar. Permanent reminder of the day he chose not to become a killer. You need rest, the doctor said. Weeks of it. Those wounds could reopen if you're not careful. Cole nodded, but his eyes were on Emma, who sat in the corner looking smaller than she'd ever looked. I'm sorry, he told her. You shouldn't have seen that. I'm glad I did. Emma, you could have killed him. You wanted to. I saw it in your eyes, but you didn't. She moved to sit beside him, took his hand. Pa always said being a man means making hard choices. You made the hardest choice. Thank you. Cole pulled her close with his good arm, rested his chin on top of her head, breathed in the smell of Kate's soap in her hair. We're going home, he said, all of us, and we're never looking back. 3 months later, Cole stood in the Helena courthouse again, but this time was different. This time was joy instead of fear. Judge Morrison smiled down at them. Mr. Harper, you're requesting to legally adopt Emma Hayes. Yes, Your Honor. And Emma, do you want Mr. Harper to be your father? Emma stood tall. Yes, sir, more than anything. Mrs. Harper, you're co-petitioning for adoption. Kate squeezed Cole's hand. They'd married 2 months ago in a small ceremony at the Silver Creek Church. Reverend Parker officiated. Margaret stood as witness. The whole town came to celebrate. Yes, Your Honor, Emma will be our daughter. Morrison signed the papers with a flourish. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I declare Emma Grace Harper legally adopted. Congratulations. Emma threw her arms around Cole so hard he nearly fell over. His ribs were still healing, but he didn't care. Kate wrapped around them both. They stood there in the courthouse crying and laughing and holding each other like they'd never let go. Outside, Samuel Mitchell waited with his wagon. He'd become a good friend over the past months, offered Cole a permanent position as foreman, gave them 20 acres and a cabin to call their own. Ready to go home? Samuel asked. Yeah, Cole said, looking at his family. We're ready. The ride back to Silver Creek was different than any journey Cole had taken in 4 years. No looking over his shoulder, no planning escape routes, no fear. Just Emma chattering about the horse Samuel promised to teach her to ride. Just Kate's hand in his. Just the future stretching out ahead of them like the Montana prairie, vast and full of possibility. That evening they visited Thomas Hayes' grave. Emma knelt beside the simple wooden marker. Cole and Kate stood back, giving her space. Hi, Pa, Emma said softly. It's me. You're Emma. The wind rustled through the grass. A robin sang nearby. The bad men are in prison, forever. You can rest now. She pulled something from her pocket, the wooden rabbit Cole had given her weeks ago. Hope. I'm leaving this with you because I don't need it anymore. I have hope now, real hope, the kind that doesn't need to be carried around. She set the rabbit gently on the grave. I have a new family. Cole's my pa now, legally and everything, and Kate's my ma. But you'll always be my first pa, my real pa, the one who taught me to be brave, to stand up for what's right, to never give up even when the whole world tells you to quit. Emma's voice broke. I love you, and I'm going to make you proud, I promise. She stood, wiped her eyes, walked back to where Cole and Kate waited. Cole put his arm around her. You okay? Yeah, I'm ready to go home now. You sure? Emma looked at him, at Kate, at the sunset painting, the sky in golds and purples, at the life they'd built together out of pain and loss and stubborn refusal to give up. I'm sure because home isn't where Pa is buried. Home is where you are, where we are, all of us together. They walked back to the wagon hand in hand in hand. Three people who'd found each other when they weren't looking. Three people who'd chosen each other despite everything. That night, Emma slept without nightmares for the first time in months. 1 year later, Cole stood on the porch of the cabin he'd built with Samuel's help. Watched Emma race her horse across the meadow, hair flying, laughing loud enough to scare the birds. She was 9 years old now, taller, stronger. The hollows in her cheeks had filled out. The fear in her eyes had been replaced by something bright and fierce. Kate came out carrying 2 cups of coffee, handed one to Cole, leaned against him in the way she did when she wanted to be close but didn't need words. She's happy, Kate said. Yeah, so am I. Me too. They stood in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only comes when two people know each other well enough that words become optional. I got a letter from Margaret today, Kate said. Webb died in prison last month. Heart attack. Price is still alive, but broken. Spends his days staring at walls. Good. You don't sound satisfied. Because it's not about them anymore. It's about us, about the life we built, about Emma growing up safe and loved. That's the real victory. Kate smiled, kissed his cheek where the scar ran from jaw to temple. Permanent reminder of the day Garrett Stone died and Cole Harper chose mercy. I love you, she said. I know. He pulled her closer. I love you too. Emma galloped up to the porch, dismounted in one smooth motion that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Did you see I jumped the creek? I saw, you're getting good. Samuel says by next year I'll be ready to help with the cattle drive. Maybe, if you keep practicing. Emma grinned, then her face went serious. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever think about Grace, your first daughter? Cole's breath caught. Kate's hand found his. Not every day, he said quietly. Not as much as I used to. Not in the way that hurts so much I can't breathe. But yeah, every day. Do you think she'd be mad that you have me now? Cole knelt down, looked Emma in the eyes. I think she'd be happy. I think she'd see you and know that you're exactly the kind of sister she would have loved. Strong and brave and stubborn as hell. Language, Kate said automatically. Emma laughed, hugged Cole hard. I'm glad you stopped. That day in Silver Creek. I'm glad you didn't walk past me like everybody else. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. That evening after Emma was asleep, Cole and Kate sat on their porch watching the stars. The same stars that had watched over them through fear and pain and loss. The same stars that would watch over whatever came next. You know what I realized today, Kate said. What? We're happy, really truly happy. When's the last time either of us could say that? Cole thought about it. About 4 years of running. About Kate's 3 years of lonely grief. About Emma's 23 days dying on store steps. I don't know. Maybe never. Maybe never, Kate agreed, which makes this even more precious. She was right. They'd earned this happiness. Paid for it in blood and tears and terror. Fought for it against men who wanted to steal it away. Built it piece by piece out of the wreckage of their broken lives. Cole, yeah, thank you for stopping, for staying, for choosing us when you could have kept running. I didn't choose you. You chose me, both of you. Looked at a broken man and decided he was worth saving. You saved yourself. We just gave you a reason to try to. Cole pulled Kate close, breathed in the smell of her hair, listened to the night sounds of their land, felt the weight of peace he'd thought he'd never feel again. Home, he said quietly. What? I used to think home was a place, a house, land, something you could point to on a map, but it's not. Home is people. It's Emma laughing. It's you in my arms. It's this feeling right here. Kate tilted her head up, kissed him soft and slow and sweet. Then welcome home, Cole Harper. Welcome home. They sat there as darkness deepened. As stars blazed overhead in the vast Montana sky, as Emma slept safe and loved in the room they'd built for her, as the future stretched out before them uncertain, but no longer frightening. Three broken people had found each other, had fought for each other, had chosen each other every single day despite the cost. And in choosing each other, they'd found something more valuable than gold or land or revenge. They'd found home, not where they were born, not where they ran from, but where they chose to stay. And staying, they'd learned, was the bravest thing of all. The story of Cole Harper and Emma Hayes and Kate Mitchell would be told in Silver Creek for generations. The man who stopped running, the girl who refused to give up, the woman who learned to hope again. Three people who faced corrupt men and killers and their own deepest fears and won. Not because they were perfect, not because they were strong, but because they were together. And together was enough. Always enough. Years later, when Emma was grown and married with children of her own, she would tell this story to her daughter, the daughter she named Grace. Little Grace would ask, "What happened to Silver Creek?" It got better. When Webb and Price went to prison, other people found the courage to stand up, to fight corruption, to build something good. It took years, but the town healed. And what happened to you, Sam? I grew up loved and safe. I went to school. I learned to read and write and ride and rope cattle. I had parents who chose me even though they didn't have to. I had a home. Was Pa Cole a good father? Emma would smile then, that soft smile of someone remembering something precious. The best. He taught me that being strong means being kind, that justice matters more than revenge, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. And Ma Kate, she taught me that it's okay to be scared, that loving someone means risking pain. That home isn't something you find. It's something you build one day at a time with the people who matter. Little Grace would think about that, then ask the question children always ask. Did they live happily ever after? And Emma, who knew the truth was more complicated than fairy tales, would answer honestly. They lived, they loved, they fought through hard times and celebrated good times. They grew old together. Pa Cole lived to 78. His last words were, "I'm home." Ma Kate lived another 5 years after that. Every day she sat on the porch of the cabin they built and talked to him like he was still there. That's sad. No, it's beautiful, because she was never really alone. None of us were. That's what family means. Even when people die, the love doesn't. It stays. It grows. It becomes part of who you are. Will you tell me the story again tomorrow? Every night if you want, because some stories are worth remembering, worth passing down. This is one of them. Little Grace would fall asleep, then dreaming of brave girls and broken men who found redemption and women who learned to love again. Dreaming of a time when justice won and families were built from choice instead of blood. And Emma would sit in the rocking chair Cole made with his own hands years ago, would look at the picture on the wall of her wedding day. Cole walking her down the aisle, tears streaming down his scarred face. Kate crying in the front row. Samuel beaming with pride. Would remember. Would be grateful. Would understand finally and fully what Cole tried to teach her all those years ago on the steps of that Silver Creek store. Home isn't where you're born. Home isn't where you run to. Home is where you choose to stay. And staying, as Emma Hayes Harper learned, that is the bravest thing of all.